In this episode today, I speak to Emmy Award-winning children's entertainment executive, author and researcher, Dr. Topa Taylor. We dive into his groundbreaking PhD research and new book, The Human Performance Intention Experiment, a quantum field framework. What makes this conversation truly special is how Topa cuts through the hype, anchoring his insights in science and the intriguing phenomena of quantum entanglement. I had such a great time speaking with Topa. I hope you love this conversation as well. Well, hello, Topa. It's great to see you. And you were just telling me you're in Oregon and it's snowing.
Yes,
How
it's true.
fabulous.
It's the holiday season.
That's wonderful. It's early snow. Wonderful. I remember I was actually lucky to be in Canada just before Christmas one year, because being from Australia, we don't celebrate Christmas at a time when it's cold. It's actually quite warm. And it was snowing. I was in beautiful Calgary. I was in Banff in
Yep.
Calgary, and it was stunning, and all the Christmas lights.
Magical.
Just
Magic.
wonderful. Fantastic. Well, Topa, thanks for coming on. Now, I'm really keen to talk about your PhD, which is the Human Performance Intention Experiment, quantum field framework. And you know what? As I was reading that, I was thinking about how quantum physics was such a buzzword until AI came. And I think AI has trumped quantum physics. But of course, both of those, in some ways, innovations have applications that are so profound for our future and our evolution on this planet. I'm sure you would agree. And
Yes.
so I'm really keen to learn, how did you go from being an Emmy Award-winning producer of incredible content, particularly in the children's space and the children's media content, to quantum physics and its impact on human behavior? So I can't make a bridge. Hopefully you can make a bridge.
Very good. Well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me on your show. It's a real delight. So, I started my career in the entertainment industry, and making over the last 20 years, I've made probably 15,000 episodes of television, things often for little kids, families, educational content, things like Arthur and Caillou and Franklin the Turtle and Little Bear and many more. And what's interesting about television and storytelling is that it binds us around the world. One of my favorite stories was walking out of my hotel in Paris and listening to a little boy across the street tell his mother he had to get home to watch Franklin the Turtle on television.
Fabulous.
So I think that we really are all one, and we need to really think about the future of our society and sustainability and working together. And interestingly enough, technology has really helped us bind each other and bring us together. And all of this was kind of happening at a time when quantum physics, it really kind of set its ball in motion around the 1990s, when Niels Bohr and a bunch of interesting theoretical physicists around the time of Einstein kind of started contemplating quantum physics. And, let's put it this way. In my industry, creativity, innovation, human performance really are the drivers of our sustainability, our relevance as humanity. So in the entertainment industry, of course, those are also critical elements, right? Creativity, innovation, human performance. And these values emanate from our consciousness. And, recently, through inspired by quantum physics, there has been an ongoing and fascinating conversation among theoretical physicists around our interconnectivity and a universal consciousness, an ever-present universal consciousness, whereby we as human beings tap into this consciousness, download information, upload information, and therefore are able to not only contribute to our own lives and our own communities, but in essence, we're contributing to the entire universe and our connected selves. It's a very interesting concept.
And of course, in psychology, and you're right, it also in the, in the early part of the century, you had psychologists like Carl Jung, talking about collective consciousness as well.
Yes.
And
Yes.
a lot of what we do in counseling and therapy is about tapping into that collective consciousness too. But I think the physicists are trying, like they do, trying to some tangible aspects of that. What does it really mean in the world, and of course in the mathematical world, or in the tangible world that they live in. So I can see how you were drawn to that. How did you go from there to saying, I'm going to do a PhD on, and I'm going to isolate, intention on performance for swimmers at the University of South Carolina? Like, how did you go from here, an interest, to that?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what was happening for you.
So first of all, if we think about us as all being interconnected, and we energetically and particularly, okay, so that's kind of one of the basic premises to quantum physics. We're all connected energetically and particularly. So if that's the case, and using like a basic concept like thermodynamics, which basically says all the energy that exists is, in other words, energy is neither created or destroyed, it just changes form. Okay, so if we realize that we're all connected energetically, and energy doesn't go away, it doesn't die, it just changes shape. And we think that our very thought, a thought in our head, is an energetic instance. Now, if we're connected energetically, imagine for a moment that every thought we have could impact another human being. And if that were really the case, and we knew that empirically, and we don't in this moment, but we are researching and researching and researching, if we knew that our very thoughts impacted another human being, how would we live our lives? Would we live our lives differently? Would we lead a company differently? Would we lead a local government differently? Would we lead an organization differently if we knew our thoughts impacted everyone else? So, and then, we started getting a little bit into positive psychology, right? Because we have about 80,000 thoughts in our head on a daily basis, and a vast majority, something like 90% of them, are actually negative thoughts.
Yes,
But
unfortunately.
we knew that we were walking around as broadcast antennas, just kind of like the ABC Australia, right? You're broadcasting content perpetually through an antenna.
Yes.
If we knew that we were broadcasting all these negative thoughts for everyone around us to perceive or feel, then is that really how we want to live our lives? Is that really how we want to impact other people? I would argue no. And so what we should really be thinking about is managing our thoughts, being mindful, being self-aware, so that we then can broadcast positive thoughts, and then think about the impact on other people. It would be profound. We've all walked into a room, like a conference room, where we feel this negative energy. Like we may be having a great day, cup of coffee, whistling on the way to work, and we go into a conference room, we open those doors, and when we get inside, it's like, whoa, what happened in here? Was there an argument in here, right? We can feel that energy. And so if what we felt was positive energy, that could be impactful. Now, to answer your question, let's take that a step further. So where can we actually find the impact of positive energy? So there are many sports fans out there, and let's just take American football for the sake of conversation. So in American football in Las Vegas, where they the odds for, who wins and who loses by what they should win by, right? A home field advantage in American football is worth about 2.5 to 3 points. So why is that? The football's the same size. The field
Mm-hmm.
is the same size.
Yeah.
Every 10 yards apart. The field goals at the end, the goal posts at the end of the field are the same size. So why would someone have an advantage for being at home? Well, I would argue that that's because of home field advantage. You have more fans, more energy, more positive energy promoting you to win, promoting you to
Yes.
be at peak performance, demanding that your team plays at its highest level of
Mm-hmm.
performance. So as a business guy, I contemplate as well, can that home field advantage, can that energy work and have
Yeah.
other applications, whether it be in business innovation or creativity? Like if you're
Mm.
working at the Walt Disney Company and you're trying to create the next, fantastic animated film, I think it can.
Mm.
And so when you think about human performance at that level, athletics has an enormous amount of data around it. Everybody's measuring everything, right?
True.
You're measuring in swimming, let's say, the speed of a racer. And that data is constantly being clocked. It's clocked in your rehearsals, it's clocked in your actual competitions. And you get up every morning at 5 a.m. to swim in that pool, and you
Yeah.
go, to the gym. You're eating a certain diet and nutrition. You're probably seeing a mindfulness coach, all at the highest level of amateur swimming to try and increase your speed by what? Half a second?
Exactly. It's milliseconds often, isn't it?
Fifth
Yeah.
of a second? That's what's so fascinating, is that athletes live an intentional life, but they're living it at such a peak level that even 1 second is considered an extraordinary achievement, right? And so that's kind of what attracted me, the idea of working with this concept of intention, meaning a positive, energetic thought in the world of first human performance, because it's very measurable, and then being able to take this hour of intention and making it work for business innovation, which is what we're talking.
Exactly. Topa, I do want to get to applications, but before we get there, tell me just a little bit. I had a look at your PhD and I loved reading it. Give me the overview, the abstract. What was it that you did? And in particular, what did you find? What were the results that you found, and what was surprising?
Well, I think, what I hope you found is that having a television writer write a PhD is a little different than a
It
scientist. So
was a little
I hope you
different.
found it a little more approachable. And I
It
hope
was a little bit more approachable. You're right. Yes.
I hope people out there who are interested in the space will take on the idea of reading it, because it's available on Amazon. But my experiment then, where you kind of set up this notion of our interconnectivity and, quite frankly, a quantum physics phenomena known as entanglement, where two particles are interconnected and they influence each other without regard to time and distance. It's a fascinating concept, which Albert Einstein called spooky action at a distance. And he really did not believe in entanglement. And yet the Nobel Prize for Physics was awarded to 3 scientists in 2023 that studied entanglement and proved that not only did it exist, but one could create entanglement and repeat the phenomena of entanglement measurably. So with that said, looking for a measurable application, we decided to focus on a sport in swimming where, first of all, to eliminate one variable, I call swimming a non-defender sport. In other words, rather than have
Yes.
a like in basketball where someone's trying to block your shot or take the ball from you, or in soccer, where someone's trying to prevent you from kicking a goal, with swimming, you have nothing. You have the pool, and it's your
It's
speed,
just you.
your performance. Golf may be the same way.
Mm.
So are Olympic sports, things like track and field, javelin throwing, etc. And so now you can imagine when you're writing a dissertation and you're working within the context of a university, you have to get a whole bunch of people to be in alignment with you.
Yes.
One of which is, you've got to get consent forms from athletes. But in athletics specifically, it's a very managed area of college amateur status. So the NCAA has a lot of regulations around what you can and cannot do. And then, of course, each college has rules about how you can interact or interface with student athletes. So first thing we had to do is get the University of Southern California, based in Los Angeles, the USC Trojans, to agree to that this would be an experiment we would support. The second thing we had to do was get the athletic director to agree that we could approach some of his coaches about this concept. The next thing we had to do is get NCAA compliance to make sure we were on side with the NCAA and weren't doing anything to jeopardize, the status of the team. Once we went through those hoops and we started talking to the various coaches within the university, we found a terrific coach who ran the men and women's swim team, who actually believes in, self-awareness, mindfulness, and this kind of interconnectedness that we have. And it was perfect because at that point, then we were able to embrace the University of Southern California men and women's swim team, and we were able to conduct our experiment.
Amazing. And yeah, a lot of people aren't aware of that. There are so many hoops and so many people have to agree. It's like a pitch, right? But so many people have to agree that this is a good idea. Not only that the methodology that you're suggesting is sound and will work and you're not causing harm to others. There's a lot of that. So
That's
lot
true.
of ethical considerations as well.
Yes. The latter being the most important thing. There's a long track record of really fascinating examples of not physically harming, but kind of mentally harming students, which then rightfully have set up these kind of structures to protect students and human beings so that they're not influenced.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. And so, Topa, I was fascinated by your results because you found a very strong effect. Tell us a little bit about that. To me, that was very surprising in the work. Yeah.
Here's what's so crazy about all this, right? Is that as a business guy, I was very skeptical, coming into this concept of intention creating an impact. In some ways, intention is today a real ever-present word in kind of the zeitgeist of our culture, right? You have incredible influencers that are talking about the power of intention. Maybe the most famous of which is the book The Secret, where Rhonda Byrne, talks about the idea of manifestation by creating an intention. Or you have Eckhart Tolle in his book, The Millionaire Mindset. These are, consumer books that touch on this area of the manifestation of something through intention, through our own will, through our own mind. Well, for many people, that can be considered hocus pocus, or it can be considered new age, hippie stuff. But at the end of the day, when we talk about how each one of us exudes a certain amount of energy, and if we can learn to kind of apply that energy, there can be significant impacts. It may be worthwhile spending just a couple minutes talking about a brief background, because
go ahead. Yeah.
It's fascinating to set up this impact in a way that is potentially logical, because that's how I got there. Again, I came into this extremely skeptical. So imagine so there have been dozens and dozens of experiments from Stanford University to Princeton to McGill College and everywhere in between over the past, call it 40 years, that touch on this stuff. So, you can actually measure the energy that's, coming off your body. In fact, Seiko created a watch that you could wear that powered itself perpetually based on the
Interesting.
energy that exuded from your wrist, right? So, and the average person just sitting can exude enough energy to power a small computer. So if we understand that energy in ourselves exists, then we can start thinking about applications. So one of the early applications was to take a shaman, and a shaman is really an energist, someone who works within the context of energy and uses that energy traditionally to heal people, especially in South American cultures or Native American cultures, etc. And if there was this really fascinating experiment called growth water, where a shaman used the intention of energy to shift the water, the chemical composition of water, just by his own energy and focus. Then a shaman was used to take seeds, the seeds of a fruit tree, and set an intention for those seeds to grow faster and be more productive. They were planted, of course, alongside a group of seeds that did not receive an intention. And sure enough, though the seeds that received the intention enabled the plants to grow faster and bear more fruit. And so when you start to think, that's kind of interesting, gee, this could really, work on, physical outcomes or measurable outcomes, then you have to think, okay, so what other applications are there? Well, there were some fascinating experiments done at Stanford with remote healing, where you had, let's say, shamans, once again, remotely using this this concept in physics called entanglement. So sending intentions to people who were really sick, and they never met these people, they never touched these people, but rather they were sending intention remotely for them to improve their basic health. And sure enough, those experiments showed statistically significant results compared to a control group of people with the same conditions that did not receive intention. So you start thinking about, well, if this has worked in kind of nature and this has worked in healing, then how do we take that same kind of framework and have it apply to performance of another human being? And that's where the idea came from. And so now what we have is, we took two entities that would send a positive intention in our experiment. The first was a shaman who existed and had been, practicing sending positive intentions for 20 years. And another was a theoretical physicist who is one of the early authors of energetic, subtle energy and energetic sciences, a guy by the name of Tillman and Tiller, Bill Tiller. And he was at Stanford at the time, ultimately retiring to focus largely on this particular space. And he created an electronic intention device, which we, under permission, were able to use in our experiment. So we had two entities, a shaman and an electronic intention device, sending intention toward the University of Southern California swim team. And what's really exciting is that we started this intention process during their practice sessions before the official season began. And then we continued sending intentions, in the case of the shaman, on a weekly basis. in the case of the electronic intention device, 24 hours, 7 days a week over the entire season. So from August through April, basically. And the results were really fascinating. We statistically showed an improvement overall by the body of athletes that participated in the experiment, a statistically significant improvement in their performance year over
Amazing.
year. In other words, year over year, meaning from their performance a year earlier in the same races. Like, there's freestyle and there's butterfly and there's all these different kinds of races that they run. So we compared year over year, race over race. And then what we did was we took a sample of a control group, if you will, a sample of swimmers who were basically similar in their background and in their involvement at their various universities. And so we compared their data over 2 years and whether they improved year over year, whether that improvement was significant. And it turns out that this group at USC was, performed statistically significantly better. And not only did, the women's team appear at the end of the year in the top 10 of all swim teams in America, but the men's swim team finished in the top 20. These were the best results of these two swim teams in about a decade. And the coach won Coach of the Year. So it was really an exciting result. And I'm really excited about the idea of continuing this kind of research, whether it be in athletics or in business.
And Topa, the methodology was double blind, wasn't it? So the athletes didn't know that they were in the group that was not receiving or receiving, right? So there's no placebo effect there because they didn't know, which is important. Interesting. So I'm fascinated by that. I think the coach must have been over the moon about that. And I can see that, found the right set of circumstances because it is very difficult to do this kind of work. So congratulations, Topa. It is very difficult to get to that point where you're able to do that kind of experimentation, especially in an area where it hasn't been done before. Are there any plans to replicate the study at UCLA?
Absolutely. By the way, if right now we're talking to 4 other universities about this opportunity in the U.S., we're happy to talk to universities in Australia, New Zealand as well. And if any of your listeners have relationships with universities, we're happy to do that. We're also very interested in professional, teams as well. It would be very interesting, let's say, in the case of baseball, to focus on, let's say, the pitching staff and trying to improve their performance year over year. Same with cricket, right? So, there are many applications for this, the power of intention in kind of our daily lives. And, I think what's really important for all of us to understand is we're all living in this quantum universe. We're all participants in this grand scheme, and therefore the idea of training our minds not only to think positively, but to actually focus our intentions either on helping others or helping ourselves has a powerful capacity to manifest what you seek. So that's what's kind of profoundly exciting here.
And Trooper, from a practical point of view, so, if I'm a leader and I want to take some of this and really maybe create some opportunity in my organization for this to be leveraged really and optimized, what would I be doing? What's the practice in it? What are the strategies that I would need to be looking at?
That's a great question, and we're actually looking at that right now. Where there's a group of us that are kind of putting together an institute, a scientific institute for positive intentions, and we are beginning to kind of write those practices right now. But, at the end of the day, um, what research, not just my research, but much research that occurred before me shows is that, first of all, you know, positive thought, positive intention actually is far more impactful than negative intention. That the universe arguably does not understand negative intentions. And so always framing everything in a positive way is a practice that is well embraced in the industry. The second piece would be it being very decisive, being extremely clear and simple in one's thoughts. For example, what should the intention be for a swimmer? Is it just swim faster? Well, that certainly should be part of the intention. But what really makes a swimmer swim faster, right? So that would be the ability to be present, be present. So not be worried, not be thinking about something else, but be there in the moment at that race, right? The next piece would probably be their ability to hold their breath underwater for as long as possible, because above the water, there's waves, and waves create friction to slow you down. So if you're under the water for longer periods of time, even in the fifth or sixth lap of your race, then you, by nature of physics, will swim faster. And so when you add these things to your intention, like, in other words, my intention is that I swim faster because my mind is present, because I'm able to swim underwater longer, because I've eaten correctly, because I've, gotten a good night's sleep. That specificity in intention writing or intention thought is critical to the success of the intention.
And I can see that the applications are also in the way that, we think about coaching practice. And, some of those practices we do as leaders already when we're trying to particularly skillfully change, a team or a group by creating goals and then getting more sort of specific around the goal. And so all of that. So it's very aligned in some ways to what we're doing already, but there's a different understanding to that, and that's where the intention comes from, I guess, Topher. There's this mindset around I'm actually applying intention rather than this is just a practice we do to get to, a good plan that we can follow and implement, and because we've done that before.
Yeah, that's a really good thought. And, some of the athletes, when we were having our initial, conversation, telling them about the experiment and how it was going to, how they were going to receive attention, they're like, really? I mean, you think that intention is going to help us? I mean, come on. We work out every morning. We swim. We've been doing this since we were 7 years old. We eat right. We have coaches, fitness trainers, nutritionists. And you think sending energy is going to, be impactful? But at the end of the day, scientifically, right, energy is a part of us. That's empirically proven. So the question then is, will positive energy sent from another person be impactful, in our lives? Have an element. It's not the element. It's an element in our success. And I think the answer is yes. I mean, I think that, there have been enough experiments to show where intention is impactful, that it's really worth thinking about adding this as another dimension to, one's success.
I'm keen to know your thoughts on the digitization aspect, because if you were using a device, I understand you were using a shaman, because when I think about a shaman, that's, many, many hours of mastery goes into becoming that person and really being great at that. So that's maybe outside the remit of, your normal business person's ability. But, I can get an app. I can get, is that the future? Do you see potential in that?
Really, we're, and the Scientific Institute for Positive Intentions is actually working on an app. But what I would say is a couple of things about that. So the shaman during our experiment got COVID, and they got a pretty bad case of COVID. They weren't hospitalized, but they got foggy brain and were really under the weather for about a month. And as it turned out, see, I always thought, like you, that the shaman would be more impactful than an electronic intention device. But at the end of the day, they were slightly less. Now, could you argue that if the shaman hadn't gotten, COVID, that they would have been equally to or more impactful than an electronic? Perhaps. And I would love to do another experiment or two to see if that's the case. Electronic intention device, though, the intention itself, and this is the key, was written by, practiced intentioners. So the actual words that were written and the intention that was originally sent was done by a practiced intentionalist energist, right? And then the interesting part about the electronic sending of these intentions is that it's consistent, it's regular, it was never broken. And I do think there is some, what's the word for it, positive impact based on that consistency.
So there are still words there that need to come from some area of experience. Yeah. That's wonderful. And do you think that that might be where your background in entertainment and children's media might meet and connect with this work? Because you've got such a unique experience there.
Yeah, there's no question that, look, that my life is, as a creative executive, is filled with innovation. It's filled with creativity. And at the end of the day, to deliver a production on time and on budget requires a tremendous amount of human performance. And so I'm we've always been at the forefront of technology. When I started in the animation business, each half-hour television show had 25,000 hand-painted pictures, right? It's hard to imagine that today based on where we are with software and technology. So, and literally when I started, there in the United States, there were 3 broadcast televisions, and children's television was limited to 3 hours on Saturday mornings. And then, of course, cable comes along, and you have these 24-hour channels like Nickelodeon and the Cartoon Network, Disney Channel. And then, of course, technology comes along, and all of a sudden there is no more hand-painted cells, and you have, this wonderful application of software. And so, but has the creativity diminished? I don't think so. I think technology can enable creativity and innovation when used correctly, and that's why I think there is an application that can be done for intention. And I think we're going to work on that and hopefully enable everyone who's listening to be able to send intentions to each other through an application in the very near future.
Can I be your poster child for that? I would love to be involved in that. I think that's a fantastic goal. And how can we stay connected? So how can people reach you, Topa? How can they stay connected? Because obviously there's going to be some things coming up.
Great. So I have a website, intentionsnetwork.com, that kind of talks a little bit more about this. You get a little more detail in the background. There's a link to the dissertation, should you be bold enough to want to read it. I give my nod to people like Lynn McTaggart and Dean Radin, who are practicing in this space as well, and have many ways to connect as well to them. And therefore, and I'm available on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. So thank you for your time. Yeah.
I'll add some of those links to the show notes as well, Topa. Thank you so much. I think we're just at the beginning of this, and I love that you were able to take a scientific approach to this when sometimes it's not the only way to kind of create proof and to build our knowledge. But it's fabulous to have that as well as all the other, because we have, as you sort of said, we have a lot of storytellers and a lot of people working in this in an intuitive way, in a cultural way with your shamans and Even in my culture, in Southern Italian culture, there's a lot there that I was thinking about as you were talking about this, because there are some cultural roots in this, and our Indigenous First Nations people have, I know, a lot of knowledge around this. But that's just it's another brick to the body of knowledge, and it's an important brick.
One of my favorite lines is, witches call it spells, Christians call it prayer, spiritualists call it manifestation, atheists call it the placebo effect, scientists call it quantum physics. Everyone's arguing over its name, but nobody is denying its existence.
Yeah, fabulous. Isn't that wonderful? Thank you. That's a great note to end on, Topa. Thank you so much for the conversation. It was a pleasure.